This happened just a few months ago. I work the night shift at a warehouse, so my schedule's kind of flipped. I'm usually awake from around 6 p.m. until 9 or 10 in the morning, even on my days off. It just keeps my body on a consistent rhythm. One particular night, I was working until about 4 a.m. Pretty normal shift. I clocked out, got in my car, and drove straight home. The roads were dead quiet, no one out, everything just still. I got to my neighborhood at about 4:15. It was completely silent, except for one thing. Right next to my driveway, there was a car parked on the street. That never happens around here. It was a black, older-looking sedan, and the windows were so heavily tinted that I couldn't see anything inside. The headlights were off, no interior lights, just sitting there in the dark. As I passed it to pull into my garage, I slowed down a bit to get a better look. Something about it felt off. It wasn't illegal to park there or anything, but in this neighborhood, every house is spaced out with tons of street parking. If someone was visiting a neighbor, why park directly outside my place when there were way more convenient spots closer to any other house? Still, I brushed it off. Maybe someone was having a late-night gathering and all the good spots had already filled up earlier. Who knows? Before going to bed, I peeked out the window again. The car was gone. That was that. The rest of the day went as usual. I slept during the day, got up at 6 p.m., got ready for another night at work. When I left my driveway, there was no car in sight. I figured I was overthinking the whole thing. Work was a bit rougher than usual that night, but I was looking forward to my night off after this shift. When I finally clocked out and headed home again, it was that same eerie calm on the road, no one out, nothing moving. And as I turned into my street, there it was again. Same exact car, same exact spot. I passed it slowly, squinting through the window again. Still couldn't see a thing. No movement, no light. I pulled into the garage and parked, but this time curiosity got the better of me. I walked down to the edge of my driveway to get a closer look. I kept a bit of distance, maybe 10 feet away. I didn't want to get too close just in case someone was in there. And then I thought I saw movement inside. Just a flicker, like something shifting behind the glass. But it was subtle, maybe just a reflection or my imagination. I snapped a quick photo of the license plate, thinking if this car kept showing up, I'd at least have something to give the cops. Again, by the time I checked the window later, the car was gone. Weird, but still not something I could report. They weren't breaking any laws. The next night, I had the night off. I woke up around sunset like I usually do, got dressed, and decided to take my usual long walk around the neighborhood. It helps me relax and keep my body clock in sync. When I left the house, the street was empty, totally normal. But when I came back from the walk, which was maybe an hour or so, that car was there again, parked in the same exact spot. At this point, I knew something was off. This wasn't random anymore. This time, I got a bit bolder. I walked right up to the car, hand against the window to block the reflection, looked inside. Empty. No people, no obvious reason for someone to be hanging around here. I went inside feeling more confused than anything else. It was just unsettling, not threatening yet, but definitely not nothing. I grabbed my phone to check for any notifications. I'd left it charging in the bedroom while I was walking. I noticed I had a motion alert from one of my security cameras. That wasn't unusual, except it had come from the camera inside the house. Now, I had one camera on the front porch that only ever goes off if someone's right at the door. The other 3 cameras were set up inside, mainly in common areas. I opened the app and played the clip. For the first 50 seconds, there was nothing, just a still room. I was about to chalk it up to a false trigger. But in the last few seconds, something moved. A blur, a quick figure passing across the very bottom edge of the frame. Just the top of someone's head and part of their shoulder. My heart dropped. That camera was in my bedroom, the bedroom I was standing in. Everything went still. The silence felt loud. I turned around, eyes scanning the room. I couldn't hear anything, but that didn't mean no one was there. I bolted for the door. As I ran out of the room, I heard it, movement behind me. Footsteps, fast, heavy, right behind me. I sprinted to the stairs, and by the time I hit the bottom, they were maybe 15 feet away, chasing. I didn't even look back. I yanked the front door open and ran straight into the woods next to my house. Branches whipped at my face, my breath ragged, but I didn't stop until I couldn't hear anything behind me except my own footsteps. I called 911. By the time officers arrived, the car was gone, but I had that photo of the plate. And within just a few hours, they tracked the guy down and arrested him. Mid-20s, looked completely unhinged. They found pictures on his phone, photos of me, sitting inside my house, shots taken through windows at night, notes about my schedule, what time I left, what time I got home, even details about my route to work. What's even worse is we still don't know how he got into the house or how long he'd been sneaking in before that night. It was like he knew exactly where the cameras were, where to step without setting anything off. Maybe that night was just the first time he slipped. Maybe he'd been there many nights before. I still think about that moment all the time. That small blur at the bottom of the camera feed, it was the tiniest thing. Could have easily gone unnoticed, but it ended up being the one mistake that exposed him. Even after the arrest, I couldn't shake the thought, what if I hadn't checked the footage? What if I'd just assumed it was a false alarm, turned off the lights, and gone to bed? It makes my skin crawl. And what really messes with my head is this: nothing was missing, nothing stolen. He didn't try to rob me, didn't take anything, didn't even damage the place. Which makes it worse in a way, because then you're left wondering what exactly he wanted. The cop said he was probably building up to something, that the stalking phase was only step 1. I try not to think too hard about what step 2 might have been. That happened 4 years ago, and even now, every creak in the house at night, every flicker of motion outside still makes my pulse spike. I installed new cameras, replaced the locks, upgraded everything, but nothing gives you real peace after something like that. And sadly, that's not where the weirdness ends. Fast forward a year. I was working a side gig as an Uber driver. It was a stormy night, one of those nights where the sky just won't stop crying and the roads are basically empty. That kind of weather kills business. No one wants to go out unless it's an emergency. Still, I stayed out like I always did, hoping for at least 1 or 2 pickups. You never know when a good tip will roll in. I mostly sat in an empty parking lot, phone propped up on the dashboard, rain pounding the windshield while I half-watched YouTube videos and half-listened to the storm outside. After a while, I figured I might as well grab something to eat. I drove through a fast food place, got back to the lot, and kept waiting. Then, ding, I got a ride request. Finally. It said the rider was 25 minutes away. Not exactly convenient, but on nights like these, you take what you can get. Plus, their destination was another 20 minutes in a different direction, so altogether, it was going to be a pretty decent fare. I accepted and started the drive. But the further I went, the stranger it got. The GPS was leading me out of the main town area, then down a rural road, then even further into the middle of nowhere. By the time I got close, I realized I didn't even recognize where I was anymore. There were no houses, no streetlights, just fields and trees stretching endlessly into the dark. Finally, I reached the pickup point, a lonely corner where 2 small roads met, both barely more than gravel trails. Nobody was there. No cars, no lights, not a soul. I sat there for a minute, windshield wipers squeaking across the glass as I waited. Then I grabbed my phone to send the guy a message, maybe see if he was nearby. And that's when I saw him. He showed up in my side mirror, like he'd materialized out of nowhere. I have no idea how he got there. I didn't see anyone walking as I pulled up. No one was standing on the road or near the trees. He just appeared. Soaked from head to toe, dripping, his hair plastered to his forehead, and the look on his face was unsettling, like angry and hollow at the same time. He opened the back door and climbed in. "You order the Uber?" I asked, just to be sure. He replied with my first name. That was all the confirmation I needed. I started driving, but I felt uncomfortable from the jump. For one, he didn't sit off to the side like most passengers. He sat right in the middle of the back seat, perfectly aligned with my rearview mirror. Every time I glanced up, his eyes were there, staring, not directly at me, but somewhere past me, through me. I tried to play it cool. "So, what brings you out here in this kind of weather?" I asked, trying to keep it light. He didn't answer, just looked away. Didn't even pretend to engage. That's when the uneasiness kicked in hard. The silence was thick. The only sounds were the storm hammering the roof and the tires sloshing through puddles. Every time I glanced in the mirror, his posture was the same, still, rigid, eyes scanning the inside of the car. My skin prickled every time he shifted even a little. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "Drop me off here." We were in the middle of a dark stretch of road, no buildings in sight, just trees and fields on either side. "You sure?" I asked, slowing down. He cut me off. "Drop me off here." His tone was different now, not aggressive, but definitely not right. I pulled over. As he reached for the door handle, I noticed something. His eyes flicked to my phone, the Uber app open on the console. Then he paused, didn't get out. Instead, he pulled out his own phone and looked at the screen. That's when I knew something was seriously off. I saw it in his face, this moment of realization, like he suddenly remembered. His name, his profile, everything about the ride was saved in the app. Whatever he had been planning, he was second-guessing it now. "I'll cancel the ride from my end," I said quickly. "It won't charge you." I said it in the calmest voice I could manage, trying to make it sound like I wasn't worried, like I hadn't noticed anything strange, like I was just trying to be nice. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, finally, he stepped out into the storm. And just like that, the fog and rain swallowed him up. I floored it, didn't even look back. A few days later, I got a call from the police. Someone had gone missing, last seen near the woods where I picked up that guy. I gave them everything, his name, the time of the ride, the location, everything I remembered, but they never found him, or the guy I picked up. To this day, I was the last person to see him, and if I hadn't stayed calm, I might have gone missing too. Now, you'd think after all that, the stalker in the house, the eerie Uber pickup, I'd have seen the worst of it. But there was one more story, and in some ways, it's the one that haunts me the most. It started out just like any normal weekday. It was early April, so it'd been raining non-stop for days. I work a job that has me both indoors and outdoors, which makes rainy days feel twice as long and 10 times more exhausting. That particular day, I got off work around 6 p.m., drove the 30 minutes home through slick, muddy back roads, and finally pulled into my rural driveway. That's when I noticed something strange right off the bat. There were tire tracks in the mud leading up to my house, but they weren't mine. They looked fresh, like really fresh. At first, I didn't think too much of it. Maybe a delivery truck turned around, or maybe someone just got lost and used my driveway to loop around. But then I checked my porch. No packages, no signs anyone had dropped something off. Just those muddy tracks, driving all the way up, looping by the house, and leaving. A little weird, but not exactly enough to raise an alarm. I went inside, threw off my soaked work clothes, and made something simple for dinner. Around 7:30 or so, I thought I heard a knock at the front door. It was faint, just a single knock, and with the rain and wind outside, I wasn't even sure I'd heard it right. But I went to check. I opened the door and got smacked by a gust of wind and cold rain. The porch was empty, not a soul in sight. I looked around, even stepped out a little to make sure no one was hiding off to the side, but there was nothing. Just the sound of rain pounding on the roof. I went back inside, still unsure whether it had even happened. The rest of the evening was calm. I laid out on the couch, watching TV and scrolling on my phone like usual. Nothing really happened for a while, at least not until I got up to use the bathroom. On my way back, something caught my eye. On the white tile floor, just behind the couch, was a small smear of muddy dirt. And instantly, my stomach dropped. I never wear shoes inside, especially not after a rainy shift like that. My boots were still sitting by the front door. So how the hell did mud get back here? The spot was small, like someone had just stepped there once and kept walking. And I hadn't noticed it earlier because it was behind the couch, the one that faces the TV. I wiped it up, trying to keep calm. Told myself it could have somehow come from me. Maybe I tracked something in without realizing it. Maybe I brushed up against something wet when I threw my clothes off earlier. But that weird feeling started creeping in. You know that feeling? Like something's just wrong. Like you're being watched and you don't know from where. I kept looking over my shoulder, feeling more paranoid by the minute. With the layout of the room, everything behind the couch was out of my view while I sat there. I couldn't relax, couldn't even concentrate on the show anymore. Eventually, I gave up trying. I turned the TV off and went upstairs to my bedroom. At least there, I could sit with my back against a wall. At least there, I'd feel a little safer. I stayed in bed, watching videos on my smaller bedroom TV for maybe 20 minutes, and slowly, I started to feel okay again. Then, I heard something. A soft thud just outside the bedroom door. I froze. It was quiet, just a single bump or footstep. I pressed my ear to the door, holding my breath, listening for anything else. Nothing. I knew I had to check. If I ignored it, I wouldn't sleep a second that night. So I cracked open the door and peeked down the hallway. Empty. The only other room up there was the spare bedroom, a space I hardly ever used, just bookshelves and boxes. I started walking toward it, but before I could reach the door, the TV downstairs turned on, loud. It was the same show I'd been watching earlier, but now it was blaring, echoing through the whole house. My heart jumped into my throat. Someone was down there. I ran toward the stairs, scanning the shadows as I went. Everything was dark, except for the flickering light of the TV filling the living room. But there wasn't. No one in the room, just the TV playing. I slowly approached and turned it off using the button on the back. My mind was racing. Could the remote have glitched? Could the TV just turn on by itself? It felt intentional. I went into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and started clearing the house room by room. First floor, all closets, every corner. Nothing. No signs of anything wrong. I should have called the police then, but I didn't. I think part of me still wanted to believe I was just being paranoid. I went back upstairs, now determined to at least check the spare room. I opened the door slowly. Everything looked normal until I saw it. On the floor, just in front of the closet, was the TV remote. Not the one from my bedroom, the downstairs remote, the one I hadn't touched since turning the TV off earlier that night. I stood there for half a second, frozen. Then I turned and ran, straight out of the house. I called the police from the driveway. When they arrived, they searched the whole place and found what I hadn't. One of the downstairs windows had a broken latch, forced open just enough for someone to slip in. They think whoever it was came earlier in the day, probably when I was still at work. They drove down my driveway, maybe knocked once to see if anyone was home, then left and came back later to break in. They had been inside the house all night, watching, lurking, and when I went upstairs to bed, they must have grabbed the remote, probably turned the TV on purpose to distract me, just long enough to sneak out while I was upstairs investigating. To this day, nothing was taken, nothing damaged, not a single clue as to what they were trying to do. And honestly, that's the scariest part of all, because if someone's not trying to steal, what are they trying to do? These kinds of stories stick with you. They change the way you see your home, your safety, your routines. I don't scare easily, but every now and then, when the wind hits the house just right, or I catch a flicker of movement on a camera, I remember, and I check again. Because sometimes, the scariest things don't make a sound.